Hi, Alexandra. How are you doing?
Hi, Supinder. It's so great to meet you. Your show is fantastic. I just binged the entire first season.
Oh, you did. Excuse me, that's a lot. That's a lot of
Yes.
story to take in to
Yeah,
binge.
because it's
Yeah.
very serious. It has some really serious storylines. But I want to know first, how did you land the role of Sabrina in Allegiance?
You know what? It's an interesting story because Anar Ali and I are good friends. And so we've known each other since I studied at the CFC. Anar was in the writers program and I was in the actors program, and we had done a short film together. But really after that, for years, we hadn't worked on anything together. And when Anar tells the story, she says that when she was developing the character of Sabrina Soho, that she always thought of me. But like the way these things go and superstitions and whatnot, she never told me about it. And so I was working on a show for CBC called Sort of, and I got the audition. And there were certain things about Sabrina that were a little bit different. And then I was in a different headspace because the character that I was playing on the other show was kind of like a wild girl, and I had just had a child. And so my headspace was quite different. So when I saw the audition come in for Sabrina, I thought that Anar was doing me a favor by bringing me in because she had written, it was a Sikh Punjabi woman, and she knows my family, she knows my background. And I was like, oh, Anar really doesn't want me for this part. She's just doing me a favor because I'm a friend of hers, and she thought maybe I would be upset with her if she didn't get me an audition for it. And so I went in, and the stakes felt low because I had all of these thoughts in my head, and often as actors you do. Um, I went in and I auditioned with Enrico Colantoni, and um, and it just like Alexandra, it just like came alive. Like it's just like I can't explain to you, but the chemistry and the scene and the characters, and if you know Enrico, like he just makes everything easy. Working with him is a dream. It doesn't feel like work. It just feels like you're just having a conversation with him. And I left just thinking, I don't know about this part, I don't know about this person, but if I get to work with that man, if I get to work with that man, I will be a better artist. I will be better at my job for it. And so when I got the call that I got the part of Sabrina Soho, I was ecstatic. And then, of course, Anar called me and she was like, well, I had this part in mind, but I didn't want to jinx it for you. And so it was just, it's nice to work with your friends. It really, it's a different, like, magical thing that happens. There's a trust there, there's a knowing there. And so that's how I got the part of Sabrina Soho, and I'm very lucky.
My favorite episode of the first season was the heart-wrenching one about the Indigenous couple whose baby is stolen. Do you have a favorite episode, and is it from the first season or the second season?
Without giving away too much about the second season, I do have a favorite episode in the second season. Um, Only because of the way that things came together and just some of the things that happened on set. Um, I think in the second season, my favorite episode is episode 8. Um, and it centers around hockey. So for those of you, watching, it's a very Canadian sport, but oddly enough, it's also a very this sport that the Punjabi community has sort of latched onto. I don't know if you know about Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi Hockey Night in Canada, where they do the announcements and everything in Punjabi. And so it's fantastic. And so yeah, that episode is one that I really love in the new season. Um, but the episode, I'm trying to think in terms of, I really liked 9 and 10. The episode that you're talking about was, yeah, gut-wrenching, written by Penny Gunnarsson, directed by Madison Thomas, and they just did a wonderful job because they're of the community and they know that community. And it was such a pleasure working with them and being brought in to get a better understanding of the injustices that that community faces, and the potential that we have as a country, as a community, as a police force um, to negate some of, not negate is not the word, but to heal some of the trauma that's happened in that community. Um, and similarly, I think 9 and 10 have that same note in terms of going into the gangs of the Sikh Punjabi community and also looking at that trauma and that it starts so young. Um, I was really surprised to see that and really proud of the writers that we showed this version of gang life that wasn't idolized, that, didn't focus on like the money and the power and all of these things, but really focused on the kids. I think that was my favorite piece about telling that story.
What is it like when you're wearing all that police gear, like the bulletproof vest?
It's hard. It's heavy. But also shooting in Surrey, especially because we shoot into November and December, it's warm, which is nice. Whereas now that Sabrina's a detective and all I get is a suit, I'm just like, oh, I miss that uniform a little bit.
You were born in India, but grew up in Toronto. How old were you when you moved to Canada?
I was 4. I was 4 years
Oh,
old. And it's interesting in terms of building Sabrina as a character because often the way that I work as an actor is I like to put bits and pieces of my own experience into what that individual has experienced. But with Sabrina, it's very specific where because I moved to Canada when I was 4, a lot of my experiences as somebody who's newly immigrated are very different than Sabrina's because Sabrina was born here, her father was born here. And so her roots are really deep in the country, which is why, when this terrible thing happens to her father in the first season, this question of who is her allegiance to knocks her off her feet because for her answer is in terms of if somebody asks you where you're from, I'm from Canada. I'm very Canadian. Whereas my answer when somebody asks me where I'm from, because I was born in India, is I'm Indian. And so it's a different belief system, it's a different identity that I had to build for myself with Sabrina and different things that I found about how we see the world differently.
how have Sabrina's circumstances changed in the second season? I mean, she's a detective, but what does that entail?
I think the circumstances are different because also her, her father is no longer being looked at in terms of being charged with treason and the charges have been dropped, right? So there's a little bit of the pressure is off a little bit, but then there's this big question of this huge injustice has happened to my family. And how do I make that right? Make that right for my father, make that right for myself in terms of this world that I want to live in. Um, and so that's a difference in terms of what her intent is and what her goals are for the season. But then there's also, she's a detective now. Under the circumstances where it's probation, she's not a detective fully. On a probationary period and she still has to prove herself, which is similar to season 1. But it comes with the confidence now that she solved a couple of cases. She knows her powers. She knows what she's capable of and what she's not capable of. And also she's got a new partner in Zach Kalani. And she's got to navigate because where Vince was so warm and really a teacher, Zach, they call him the Zach Hammer. It's really like, she's thrown into the fire with him and almost has to keep up a little bit more and is not going to receive that support like she did with Vince.
In the miniseries you created, The 410, you play someone who winds up on the wrong side of the law. Is it more fun to play someone in authority or someone who's breaking the rules?
Oh, it's way more fun to play somebody who's breaking the rules. Oh my gosh.
That's what I
But
figured.
but Sabrina also breaks the rules.
Oh, you're right. She does.
Yeah. And I think that's the more fun thing to I think it's way more fun to also play the villain than it is to play the good guy because it's just you get to play with different parts of yourself that most of us don't get to play with in real life. Most of us are the good guy in real life.
Hmm.
I'm acting, I'm going to work. I want to stretch a little bit. I want to dance in different personalities and put that on and see what it feels like.
And finally, can I ask you about your appearance on an episode of Heartland? What was that like?
Um, yeah, that was really lovely. It's a great crew. I mean, I think they're into their 18th season. And so it was nice to go in there, get to play a cowgirl for a little bit. I'd never ridden a horse. I got to ride a horse. I learned a lot. It was also an interesting time because I was pregnant at the time. And so it was just like, um, yeah, I was going through a lot of like new life moments and then traveling to Calgary and filming that episode. It just like it came at a very important time in my life and it was really fun.
Thank you so much for chatting with me about your experiences in acting and especially Allegiance. I'm really looking forward to the second season and
Thanks so
especially
much.
that episode 8, right?
Episode 8, yeah, we gotta wait
Okay.
for it, but yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Thanks so much, Alexandra. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
Thank you, Supinder. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell in the top right-hand corner if you'd like to see more of my celebrity interviews. Got a lot more lined up, so make sure you don't miss out on them.